Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am going to do a video tutorial on Sister Regina Martin's famous Irish soda bread. You can find the recipe in the Mother Seton Regional High School 25th Anniversary Cookbook 1963 to 1988 if you happen to have access to a copy of this. You can also find the recipe on the Mother Seton Regional High School Alumni Facebook page. I've posted it there other years, and I will post it there again this year. However, when you make this bread, texture is everything, and I want to show you the texture of the batter, the dough, before you bake it, because that will give you confidence to make some delicious Irish soda bread. In the 1980s, I spent several years standing beside the master as she made the bread, and I learned how to do it from her. And so I feel like as a service to the Mother Seton Regional High School community, I'll do this video tutorial. If you like this video tutorial, I would invite you to consider making a donation to Mother Seton Regional High School for girls. It's a wonderful place, and I encourage you to check out the Facebook page and the website of the school to learn more about it. Without further ado, I'm going to get started. Just so you know, I did wash my hands before I started this video, and before I actually knead the bread, I will wash them again. Now, I already have my ingredients in the bowl, but I'm going to go through what they are. So, I put in 4 cups of flour, and sometimes you have to adjust that quantity based on whether or not you have a heavy hand with the buttermilk, but approximately 4 cups of flour. It's unsifted. You can use multi-purpose or you can use bread flour. Don't use self-rising because we are going to put in leavening agents as part of this recipe. 3/4 cup of sugar. I use a little less than that because I like a little less sweet Irish soda bread. And then I use a generous dash of salt. I like the salt to balance the sweetness in my Irish soda bread, and so I use, like I said, a generous dash of salt, but that's to taste. Now, here's the interesting thing. It's Irish soda bread, and I always used to tease Sister Regina about this. And you do use baking soda and you use baking powder, but here's the kicker. You use more baking powder. In fact, you use 4 teaspoons to the baking soda. You use 1 teaspoon of the baking soda. Sister Regina always told me that approximately you use as many teaspoons of baking powder as you have cups of flour. So then you add your raisins, and Sister Regina and I always have used the dark raisins, but there's no rule. You could use light raisins if you wanted to. Some people put caraway seeds in this bread, but this bread, as written, does not have those in it. So I have my ingredients in the bowl, and now I'm going to add the buttermilk. Now, this is largely where the feel comes in. The recipe as written says 3/4 cup of buttermilk, but depending on the muses and your flour and whatever other conditions affects texture, you might have to adjust that a little bit, but keep 3/4 cup in mind. Now, the key to this bread is texture, and also you do have to knead it by hand. You could wear gloves, but I wash my hands and make sure they're good and clean, and I have at it with my hands. It's a wonderful sensation to knead bread, and I do think that the bare hands give you a better sense of the bread. So I am going to wash my hands again and begin the kneading. So I've washed my hands. I'm going to touch the buttermilk container minimally. Now, I do have some buttermilk left from my family making buttermilk pancakes, and I'm going to use a bit of that. And I'll probably have to open the other container, but let's just give it a feel. I've baked this enough that I don't measure the buttermilk in the measuring cup anymore. Not a problem. It's a very forgiving recipe. If you overshoot on the buttermilk, just add a little more flour until you get the texture that is correct. So I'm going to mix this in. I might have overshot on the buttermilk, but let's see. Now, kneading is a wonderful meditative process, and when I make this bread, much as Sister Regina did, I actually say some prayers for the people that I'm making it for. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It also grounds me, and it's a lovely tradition. And just like Sister Regina used to make multiple loaves and share it far and wide, I do bake a bunch of these loaves and share them with people in my circle of influence. Now, hopefully, as I'm standing here talking to you and kneading, the deer won't come and visit my yard and set my dogs off. The dogs are very loud. I do love when the deer come, but not when I'm trying to do a video. So let's see how we're doing. Now, I had already mixed up 1 loaf of bread in this bowl, and I don't rinse it between batches. I just kind of go with it. And let me show you the texture. Now, this is probably a little bit on the wet side of what it could be, but because I've baked so many loaves, I know that this is going to bake up and just be fine. And in fact, the way that I prefer it and the way that my family prefers it, because it'll be a little moist. You want to knead it just enough to get the ingredients mixed together. And it should look like this. It should be a tacky ball of dough that actually kind of sort of cleans the bowl if you roll it around in the bowl. It's moister than Play-Doh, and it doesn't run through your hands when you pick it up. And that's what it should feel like. And this again is 4 cups of flour. Now, Sister Regina said to bake it in 1 spring pan. What I do is I use 2 loaf pans. So I divide the dough up and I put it in 2 loaf pans. And that's what I'm going to do today. Sister Regina never greased her pans, but I'm not that brave. And so what I do is I use a little pan in the pans, and I take a paper towel and spread it around the pans to evenly distribute it. And I find that it makes my bread come out much easier. Now, I'm going to put this in the pans. Sister Regina baked in aluminum and glass sometimes. I like baking in pottery and stoneware. I have 2 loaves already in 2 of my stoneware loaves, and so one of these pans that I'm working with here is glass. And the thing about glass is it does bake the bread a little faster than the stoneware. And so I will check that loaf a little more carefully than the stoneware loaf. Now, when you bake this bread in 2 loaves, I bake it at 350 degrees, and I bake it somewhere between 40, 45, 50 minutes at the most. I start to check it at 35 minutes, and you know that the bread is done when the top is golden brown. It starts to smell done. You start to know what that is. And the bread gently falls away from the side of the pan. And if you were to stick a knife in the bread, the knife should come out relatively dry. It might have crumb on it, and it might have like kind of a smear of dough, but not wet dough on it. And so that's how we determine the bread is done. And you know your oven, so you know how times vary according to your oven. If you're baking at a different altitude than the East Coast, I would leave it to you to figure out if there's any changes because of that. But that's it, folks. Now the bread is in the pans. You don't have to spread it out. It will do that alone on its own as it bakes, and it will fill these pans very nicely and give you a lovely loaf. So that's pretty much it. I am going to pop these in the oven, and in about 40 minutes, I'm going to have some lovely Irish bread. So I hope this was helpful. Consider making a donation to the school if you like this. And if you like this video, please consider giving me a like. And also leave some comments. I love comments, and I'd be happy to answer those if you leave me comments. So take care and enjoy St. Patrick's Day.